in raising the flags at sunset on Sunday, and then lowering them out of respect for Indigenous veterans on the 8th, then raising them again in anticipation of the 11th of November, then lowering them to honor all our veterans who laid down their lives for this country, after which they would be raised.
Welcome back. That was the new Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations, Mark Miller, on plans to raise and lower flags on federal buildings across the country. They were lowered, you might remember, to half-mast on May 30th after unmarked burial sites were discovered at a residential school near Kamloops. Joining me now is retired military veteran John Moses, a Six Nations band member. Nice to see you this morning, John.
Good morning, Yahweh. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like everyone has an opinion on this story because it is one of those ones, but probably some of people's opinions matter more, and I would say yours certainly does. What did you make of the decision to where we are now? So we're going to raise them later tonight, lower them for Indigenous Veterans Day tomorrow, and then same for Remembrance Day.
Right. Well, I think over the past, 48 or 72 hours, there's been a lot of movement on this, and, certainly the flag is going to be in motion, but I think the course of events, as most recently described, is the most appropriate. So I concur with the course of action that has been taken. The flag will be raised once again permanently at the conclusion of the ceremony on Thursday. I agree with that. It being understood, however, that their matters will be expedited relative to the implementation of remaining Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action.
Yeah, and I guess there was this other idea too from the AFN that there would be some way to put the orange Every Child Matters or the Truth and Reconciliation flag somewhere in the parliamentary precinct. Do you think that is appropriate?
Well, I would agree with that for a fixed period of time. At one point, the statement that I saw said that the orange flag would be attached somehow to the peace tower. I don't know how that would logistically work with two flags on a single mast, but that issue aside, I do agree that it is appropriate that somewhere an appropriate space be set aside for the orange flag to be permanently displayed.
Tell me a little bit, John, about your experience with residential schools. Are there people in your family who attended residential schools who are survivors, and what you thought of the decision to lower the flag for those people?
Well, certainly on my father's side of the family, on the Moses side of the family, there were 3 generations that were raised at the Mohawk Institute Indian Residential School in Brantford, also called the Mush Hole. My great-grandfather, Nelson Moses, was there in the 1880s. My grandfather, Ted Moses, was there in the years of the Great War. And then my own father, Russ Moses, was there under exceptionally severe wartime and post-war conditions from 1942 until 1947.
Wow.
Both Ted Moses and Russ Moses were military veterans as well. I served myself. My father was, aside from being a residential school survivor, he was a naval veteran of the Korean War and an Air Force veteran of the Cold War era. So it's this issue of residential school attendance and later military service is very much a fact within my family. So.
Yeah, how do you reconcile those things, you personally, John, knowing that so many parts of your family were subjected to residential school and yet you and as you said, your father still chose to serve this country?
Yeah, well, especially during wartime, I would want to dispel any myth that Indigenous peoples were involved during wartime out of any sort of quaint or naive notion of subservience to the king or queen as the Great White Mother or anything else like that. It was a hugely divisive issue within families and communities, and even amongst those who did volunteer to serve, their individual motivations varied greatly, spanning the material or the practical to the political. And being as I am a Six Nations band member, being Ungwahoe, being Haudenosaunee, our service was very much in the context of the Covenant Chain Wampum Belt, which essentially stipulates trading and economic partners in peace and military alliance during war. So I think fundamentally that's how I would frame any Six Nations veterans' participation.
How important is Remembrance Day to you? And how important was it that those flags go up so that they could go down?
Well, it's profoundly important, as it is for, Canadians generally. I had a great uncle, Jim Moses, who was killed in action while serving with the Royal Air Force during the First World War. My maternal grandmother, Edith Anderson Montour, served as a nurse with the Army Nurse Corps of the American Expeditionary Force during the First World War. There were others who served in, we've had family members who have served in all conflicts in all branches of the service. So it's something that we're very much aware of and very, very proud of, even though our people were actively being denied the full rights and benefits of citizenship at home. We were nevertheless at the very forefront in fulfilling abroad what is arguably that most onerous and profound obligation of citizenship in donning uniform and bearing arms against the nation's enemies. So these thoughts are never far from my mind.
Let me ask you just finally how residential schools affected your father, your grandfather, how it broadly affected your family, if you can give us a sense.
Well, I know in my father's own case, he never hid his residential school, neither did he dwell upon it. Quite aside from the tragic circumstances of his childhood upbringing, I can only convey to you that he was a loving husband and father and family man in all respects. He wrote a memoir of his residential school experience way back in 1965. So he was still a relatively young man when he wrote that memoir, and I think the writing of that memoir served a number of, I guess, therapeutic purposes. In his own case, he was approached by the TRC commissioners and researchers when all that research was undergoing. They were aware of his memoir. They asked him if he wanted to add or clarify anything, and he took a look at the memoir once again and said, no, anything I had to say concerning that aspect of my life, I committed to paper in 1965, and it still stands. So that memoir remains his statement on his residential school experience.
And Indigenous Veterans Day, which is tomorrow, is that something that you mark too, John, or do you prefer to wait until November 11th?
Well, the one thing I would say, and I do have to let you know that I'm active in a couple of Native veterans organizations, including Aboriginal Veterans Uktukdun, or the NAVA Vets, as we call ourselves. I'm also active with the Six Nations Veterans Association at the Six Nations of the Grand River. And on the one hand, it's understood that we all serve together and we all sacrifice together. So accordingly, we will all remember together. But having said that, with the setting aside of the Monday as National Indigenous Veterans Day, as far as I understand the history of that, that's a fairly recent innovation. And I believe now that each day of the week of Remembrance Week is set aside for a particular group. The Monday happens to be National Indigenous Veterans Day, and I will certainly observe the day in my own way, but I will also certainly be observing November the 11th as well.
Well, I will be down at the National War Memorial on Thursday, so if you're down there, let's make sure to say hello. Thank you for your perspective, and thanks to you and your family for your service. That's a pretty remarkable and proud history you have there, John. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Yahweh.
Thank you.